Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video. If you're new around here, my name is Marcelina. I'm a 15-year-old teen author. On this channel, I do all sorts of content. You'll find a lot of short form edits and such from me of all of my characters. And then on the long form side, I tend to make writing vlogs, editing vlogs, publishing vlogs as I get to that stage. And I just like to document every part of my process while also inspiring other fellow teen writers and aspiring authors to go after their dreams and make those come true, which perfectly leads into the topic of today's video. If you saw my last video, I kind of reflected on my personal experience writing my last book, because for a little bit of background context, if you're new around here, I wrote and published The Blood That Divides Us. This is a YA mystery romance. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'm currently in the early stages of a new YA mystery romance. This one's a little bit more FBI true crime coded, called Labeled Innocent, Presumed Dead. I'm currently taking a break from that, stepped away from that project for a little bit. So in the meantime, for last week's video, I kind of just reflected on the process, talked about like how it felt writing a book during my summer break at 15 years old. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit and focus more on the general lens of if you want to write a book, whether you are 13 years old or 29 years old, it doesn't really matter. I kind of wanted to sit down, share with you some of my tips, my suggestions, what I find helpful, debunking some writing myths on social media that you might have heard, and just trying to give you confidence that you can do it. Age doesn't matter, prior experience doesn't matter, if English is your first language or not, it doesn't matter, if you have never written a book in your life and you don't even like reading but you're trying to get into it, like, it does not matter who you are, where you came from, how old you are, what credentials you have. That's irrelevant in writing. That's the best part. You don't need a resume, you don't need experience, you don't need a letter of recommendation. Like, you call the shots. It is such a one-man, solo man, woman job, and anyone can do it. So for that reason alone, I feel like it's really chaotic, because if you go online, you search up writing advice or how to write a book, like, you get hundreds of thousands of things that pop up, and honestly, some of them just kind of make you doubt yourself even more, because you're like, I don't know if I can do this. Can I do this? This seems too hard. I'm here to say, as someone, not to flex, but who has been writing stories. I literally have composition notebooks from when I was like 5 and 6 years old. But for someone who wrote their first Google Docs, like online story at 11 years old during the COVID pandemic, published my first little short story also at 11, published my first actual book at 14, and I'm on track to publish Labeled Innocent, Presumed Dead this February. Like, I don't want to say I know what I'm doing, because I really don't, but I feel like I've definitely acquired a lot of tips and tricks, and I kind of wanted to guide you. This is not going to be as in-depth as some other writing videos you may come across. This is not a craft video by any means, but I just have a few things I want to share with you and address to hopefully help smooth your process out, answer some questions. And of course, if you have any more questions of things that I don't talk about in this video that you are confused about or you want me to elaborate on, please let me know in the comments down below. I always respond to every single person individually, and I would love to know kind of where your head's at and some of your opinions on this. Okay, let's get started. So I have a notebook right here because I am so forgetful and I tend to go on tangents a lot, and I want to make sure I'm hitting all of my points. So let's see, what am I talking about first? Okay, the chapter by chapter outline. Let's start there. If you know anything about writing, you'll know that there's two camps that people tend to fall into: the plotters and the pantsers. Very simple. The plotters are people who outline. That's driven into their head. It's their mantra. They cannot write a book without heavily planning it out, brainstorming, having documents and notebooks of like detailed analysis and basically brainstorming a bunch beforehand. Versus the pantsers, who literally fly by the seat of their pants. They discovery write. They don't like outlining, or they just don't outline, and they kind of just do it. They open up a new document and they just start typing whatever the heck their brain tells them to type, and they kind of just go with the flow based on vibes. Now, I just want to say either is fine. I feel like you'll get people that are like, you need to outline your book. I personally don't think that. And this is coming from a hardcore plotter. I don't think it's 100% necessary to outline your book beforehand. Now, do I think that it is extremely beneficial and I never regret it and it makes the process so much easier? Yes. But if that's just not how your brain operates, if you're not like spend a month or 2 months beforehand to outline it, if that kind of kills the joy for you and you just want to write, like, just write. However, I have a method of outlining called the chapter by chapter outline. There are many variations of this out there. I have a couple of vlogs already on my channel. I'll link them down below where I actually make my chapter by chapter outline for this new book. So if you want my live reaction and process of that, you can watch those. But essentially, I open up a new Google Doc, make a table, and then I split it into 2 columns. The left-hand column, I label chapters, and I go chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, so on and so forth. And then the right-hand column, I do a 1 to 3 sentence description of what's going to be in each chapter. And again, there are many variations of this, but this essentially gives you kind of a roadmap. So instead of sitting at your computer being like, well, I know this character has to get there, but what should happen in this chapter? What should I address? If you plan it out beforehand and you give yourself essentially like a GPS to follow, it's like a road trip. Like, yeah, that's your GPS, but are you confined to that? No, you can make pit stops and little like side quests along the way, and you could totally deviate from the outline, but it just really, really helps keep you on track and keeps the ideas flowing so that you can write a book in as quick of a time period as possible. For context, I wrote this book, first draft, which was quite a bit shorter than this, but you get the gist of it, in a month, and then I wrote my new book in exactly 2 months. So, not that speed is a factor in this. Trust me, I know people who have spent like 3 years working on a book and then it turns out just as amazing as the person who spent 6 months on it. It just depends on you, your schedule, your process. But I think outlines really, really help accelerate that so you know what the heck you're doing. That actually leads straight into my next point, which is your plan / schedule / deadline. I'm the type of person, I procrastinate, but I think maybe this is just me justifying it to myself, but I think one of the main reasons I procrastinate and like the material I procrastinate on is like, let's say I have this big school project due and the teacher is like, this is due in 2 weeks. In my head, I'm like, okay, well, this is due in 2 weeks. I have a math test tomorrow. I have XYZ test the next day. I have a million assignments by this Friday. I have so many other things first. This is due in a couple weeks. It's like a bunch of days. Like, I shouldn't be focusing on this when I have dozens of other things that are due before that. So I focus on what's due before that, and I just keep pushing it off and pushing it off because, you know, it's just, it feels so up in the air. Or especially if the teacher is like, turn it in whenever you finish it. Like, yeah, but I have a million other things with actual concrete deadlines, so I'm not going to get to this really flimsy thing, if that makes sense. I need strict deadlines in order to like keep myself focused. Otherwise, I'm going to keep pushing it off and it's going to fall at the bottom of my priority list because I'm convincing myself I have this due tomorrow, this due the day after. Like, I have an organized line and this other thing doesn't fit into it. So if you feel like you fall into that same camp too, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, I think that's why deadlines are so important. That was my little spiel about deadlines. But I really do believe that having them and setting them for your book is so essential. Because otherwise, I'm not bashing on people who take longer to write. I think writing is such a creative liberty. And I feel like, yes, aside from the grammatical side of things, there are really no rules to writing. It is such a individual activity, and it really depends on that person. But I feel like that's sometimes why you see people being like, oh my gosh, how did you finish a book so fast? I've been working on a book for 2 years. No offense, but it's probably because they're not strict with themselves about deadlines like they would be if they're like, oh shoot, I have my final exam next Monday. You know what I mean? Like, that really puts people into gear, especially if you crave academic validation like me. You're like, oh, like, you really pay attention to those due dates. And I feel like some people don't treat writing the same way, and I think you do have to take this with a grain of salt, because you also don't want to treat writing like a chore, like a school assignment, like a work project. Because if you do that, that's going to burn you out. That's going to kill your joy. Because if writing, which is this like form of escapism, starts to feel like a chore, what do you do with chores? You push them off. You don't want to do them. So you also don't want to be too harsh with yourself. But I think especially if you do tend to procrastinate, like having a concrete deadline of like whether or not this is good, whether or not this is complete crap, or whether this is golden, whether this is really long, whether this is really short. I'm stopping this draft because, all books don't just have to be one draft. There's such thing as multiple drafts, at a certain date. You cannot just be like, I'll finish the book whenever I finish it. Because yes, in theory that sounds great. You gotta take your time, good ideas have to simmer, you can't rush perfection, all of that, I know. But if you let it keep floating around, when the thing is, especially about being a teenager, you have a lot of actual responsibilities with school, work, college applications are looming for all of us. Like when you have so many other things in your life with actual deadlines, and then you have this thing of writing of your novel that in your mind you've convinced yourself that you'll get it done when you get it done, you don't have a deadline to it, it's going to keep floating in the abyss. It's going to keep getting pushed aside. And I'm not trying to say that you should prioritize your book over school, or that it's more important than school, your future, anything like that. Like I'm not saying that. I'm not promoting that kind of priority shift. However, I guess what I'm getting at is just not letting it be this thing where it has no numbers attached to it. If you have a physical, tangible date to get it done, where you're very strict with yourself, again, like a school project, of like, bad things are gonna happen, like, they're not, but you gotta psych yourself out to that, if that makes sense. It really makes you motivated, and then instead of scrolling on social media one night, wink wink, I know we all fall in that loophole, you'll be like, oh wait, I need to be working on my book. And writing should be fun, so again, don't force yourself to do it if you're not in the mood, but also, I think taking it more seriously, that's how you actually finish a book. Personally, for that, I like to come up with a writing schedule. This is not sponsored at all. This is going to sound sponsored because I've mentioned this website in like a million different vlogs. But I use the website Pacemaker Planner. It is so good. Oh my gosh. There's a free version and a paid version. A hashtag broke teen. So no, I have the free version. But you can still do so much with it. It's not exclusively a word tracker. There's like other tracking options, but there is like a whole section for that, and you can plug in your word count. You can add in like the date you start and the date you hope to finish. It'll automatically make little graphs for you based on like the tentative deadline, because you can always change it. I think deadlines should be flexible, especially to this degree. Based on like what you've set at the time, it'll make graphs of like, how many words do you need to write per day to hit this goal? And then you can have a setting where based on how many words you actually log in per day, it'll adjust that graph and adjust that calendar to either give you a little more words if you're falling behind, or a little less if you're actually ahead, to make sure that you reach your goal on time. So it maps it out for you. It's so easy, so efficient. I highly recommend checking it out, because I think if you don't really know where to start with like word tracking or making a deadline that is kind of concrete but it's also not at all, I think that's a great place to start. I think having something to keep you accountable and keep you on track, if you don't log in any words for a day, your graph dips all the way down, and that just doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. So it kind of like gives you a little extra motivation to be like, I need to at least make some progress, even if it's, I don't know, 50 words. That's still something. I can still log that. It's still trackable. Like, I'm still being productive with this book, so that counts. I also, real quick, I didn't really write this, but before I get to my next point, which is going to be really fun to talk about, I want to interject with like going along with the deadlines thing. I think balance is key. And what I mean by that is, you might be like, Marcelina, in my junior year of high school, I have like the ACTs and the SATs and college applications, and I work a part-time job, and I still want to have a social life. Like, I'm in soccer and student council. Like, how do you expect me to balance all this? How do you balance all of it? Truth is, I'm going to be honest, it takes some sacrifices. That's not to say that I'm an absolute like hermit crab couch potato by any means. I mean, yes, I'm an introvert for sure, and yes, I'm a homebody for sure, and prefer to stay at home anyway. But trust me, just because I was able to whip out Label Innocent, Presumed Dead, Draft 1 in a couple of months within my summer break, and my publishing schedule is within 6 months, I still have a social life. I still hang out with friends. I am about to enter my sophomore year of high school. I am currently in student council. Like, trust me, I do things outside of writing. I promise I have a life. But I think the key to balancing and managing all of this is finding time in the little things. And that sounds so stupid when you think about it. But I promise, if you can shift your mindset, it really works. And again, when I say that, I don't mean write 24/7 and give up, spending time with friends, but just find little moments. I feel like we, especially as teenagers, have more time than we realize. And I know for some of us, it's actually not the case, and you're like extremely cramped and swamped with activities day in and day out, and you genuinely have like an hour to spare, if that. And I am really sorry about that, because I think that some people's schedules are just way more packed than others, and that can be really overwhelming and hard, and I get it. But I think we also underestimate like how many times you just remember sitting on the couch staring off into space, or like half watching a TV show, or doom scrolling for like 2 hours, or taking a really leisure like 40-minute shower or something. I don't know, those are just the first examples that came to my head. But I feel like it's a lot more than we give ourselves credit for, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with scrolling on social media, having a hard day, and just needing to do something mindless, or playing a little video game. That's fine, that's amazing. But I think if you're really trying to be serious about your book and get your book done in a timely manner, I'm not saying you have to cut that out completely, but I think you really need to sacrifice some of that. So for example, if you're the type of person, you normally have a routine and you scroll on TikTok for 2 hours every night, maybe you only scroll on there for an hour and then dedicate that other hour to working on your book. I would recommend working on your book first and then going on TikTok, because trust me, doom scrolling can be an endless cycle, and if you do that first and then expect yourself to stop after 15 minutes or half an hour, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. You will not be able to pull yourself out of that trance. And then every word you type, you're going to be thinking about going back on social media. So I'd recommend writing a little bit for a certain time limit. Writing sprints are so helpful. Highly recommend. You can find so many like pre-recorded ones on YouTube, live streams, or you could just do it the classic way and set a timer yourself. Do a 30-minute sprint, 15-minute break, 30-minute sprint, 15-minute break, or you can alternate. Do kind of a countdown method, a stacking method, whatever you'd like. And then let yourself scroll on TikTok, go on Instagram after, because then that's also a reward. So I just think finding time, sacrificing things, if maybe like kind of not speeding through, but maybe being a little bit more mindful, taking a quicker shower, doing your skincare a little bit faster so that you could squeeze in a 15-minute writing session before bed. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's a really small amount of time, the words add up, the progress adds up. Before you know it, you will have a finished manuscript, but you can't just expect time to poof out of nowhere and plop itself in your lap. You kind of have to make time for it. And if you don't have time, again, find time in the little things. Wake up, even if you're someone who loves sleeping in. Unfortunately, sorry, maybe wake up 30 minutes earlier before you have to go to school, if you have a packed day after school, and then write a little in the morning. Or, I'm not promoting bad sleep schedule, but maybe stay up 30 minutes if you can limit yourself healthily to write a little bit. Just find time where you can. And again, any minute counts, any word counts. Balance is key. Okay, anyway, that was a whole tangent. Moving back to what's actually on my list. Now let's say you've done that. You've created a schedule, you have an outline, or a loose outline at least. You have a plan. How do you transition from a really hard day at school, 3 tests, maybe some drama with your friends that happened at lunch, an intense basketball game, you come home, you're all sweaty, you shower. Okay, now it's time to write. But how do you turn that part of your brain off and get in the mood? So I have a couple tips for being able to get in the mood, kind of get in that writing ambiance so that you can work on your book. There's 3 things. It's kind of a 3-parter. One of them I cannot live without. I will never not do it, and if I don't do it, I think there's something wrong with me, because this is the tip I live by. And then the other 2 you could do if you want, and I still recommend them and do them myself. but I feel like they're a little bit more individualistic. Depends on the person, what you typically enjoy, if this is within your skill set or comfort level. But the one thing that I cannot live without, that I think is so crucial to getting yourself into the mood of your story, is music. More specifically, creating a Spotify playlist. And I'm sure you've seen it. I feel like the best example I can give is Chloe Walsh. She actually makes these playlists like as she's writing, and then she kind of communicates and updates her readers through the Spotify playlist. And I feel like she does it a little bit more like moment by moment, scene by scene type of thing. So it'll describe a scene like character A and character B are cuddling together during a rainstorm. It's kind of a moment. So when you get to that scene, you just turn on that playlist, and it's, even if it's on shuffle, like it's all describing that scene. Or you could do one for each character. So you could do one for your FMC, then you could have a separate playlist for your MMC, and then one for your side character, and then whenever you're writing scenes with those characters, you could turn that specific playlist on, and it's like all these different songs that are tailored to them. Or the last option, which is what I tend to do, for no particular reason, I just kind of, I don't want to have multiple, I really like the organization of just having one, where you just do one big playlist for your book, and I do organize mine, so the top ones are like my FMC, then my MMC, then my side characters, and then I move in chronological order of the plot. The romance love songs are usually at the bottom because it's toward the end of the story, and then like the intense drama songs tend to be in the middle, the climax, middle of the story, so on and so forth. You can organize it however you'd like, but the idea is to have a combination of songs, not that you like listening to. If you do, that's great, and I think listening to music that you're vibing with, if there's this one trending song that you really like, can get you in the mood, but that's not central to your story. That's not unique to your book. So how is it going to give you that connection? So you could either do songs that you just feel like perfectly fit the character, describe the character to a T. So for instance, using one of my characters from Labeled Innocent, Presumed Dead, Kyle, he is the MMC, well, one of the MMCs, it's a love triangle. Don't hate me, don't click off the video, please, thank you. But Kyle is one of the two male main characters, and he is like the organization's leader. He's just very like cold and grumpy, so, but like he makes a lot of hard decisions and doesn't feel bad about them. So whenever I hear the song Heartless by The Weeknd, I always think of him. Like that fits him so well, because of so many ruthless decisions that he's made for certain people. It's just like, that's him. But then on the flip side, you could do songs that you think your characters would listen to if they were real. So for instance, Jaden, the other male main character of the book, love him too. They're both amazing. Trust me on that. But Jaden is half Russian. He is fluent in Russian. There's this lovely Russian artist. Her name's Erica Ludmion. I definitely am butchering her last name. I'm so sorry. But you may know her from her popular hit song Yad, which was trending like a couple years ago. I'll play a little snippet. But I feel like a lot of people don't know she has so many other songs. This album in particular is my favorite. Almost every single song is a 10 out of 10 banger. Most of her songs, except for this one, is all in Russian. I think this one's like mainly in English, but like half and half. They're one of those where even though you don't know what the heck she's saying, it's so catchy and emotional and tugs on your heartstrings and makes you just kind of want to like vibe, but then it also makes you like stare at a ceiling and contemplate life. When I was adding, if you look at the official playlist, which by the way, I always leave the link to my Spotify in the description, so if you want to check out the public playlist for both of my books, you can. But if you look at the playlist specifically for Labeled Innocent, Presumed Dead, you'll notice I have 4 songs of Erica's on there. They're all in Russian. And that's not to say necessarily that they describe him, I mean, other than him being Russian and they're in Russian, they're like, it's not like racist or anything, but it's mainly because I feel like he would listen to those. They just encapsulate less of his personality and more of his vibe, his essence, what he's about, and I just feel like he would totally listen to them, so that's why I added them. So my point being, you could do that too if there's a song where you're like, oh, my character would be all about that, add it. Trust me. If it just reminds you of your character in the slightest, you should add it, because then as you're listening, it gives you so much desire to get inside their head more and to explore their story more and vibe with them. So I recommend that. Also, I think the other two, like I said, they're more specific to you, and that would be Pinterest boards and edits. So for the Pinterest board, I also did this for Label Innocent Presumed Dead. You know how on Pinterest you could make a board, but then you could divide it into different sections, all within the same board? So you could do that with your story. Have it titled whatever your WIP's name is, but then make sections for each of your characters, each of the dynamics, the relationships. For example, like the so-and-so siblings, or you could do like a family, or if there's a certain couple that you want to highlight, or a certain friendship, and you just fill it to the brim. You could spend an entire afternoon dedicated to just scrolling on Pinterest, finding faceless images, aesthetics, anything you like that reminds you of that you think would fit into that category perfectly. Add it in there and make a collage of sorts, and then you can kind of reference it whenever you need inspiration, motivation, scroll through it. And that visual, this especially works if you're a visual learner. I cannot describe it. I don't know how it works, but it works. And it really can kind of get you in that mood of your character's energy and their attitude and like the vibes you want to pinpoint with their POV or with this certain dynamic or relationship. Also, on the edits thing, again, this is probably the most specific one, but if you are someone who you do make edits or you do like edits, you could just go on CapCut and make, even if you're not good at it, even if it's out of your comfort zone, you don't even have to post it either, but just for yourself, make an edit of your characters. Find an edit audio that describes them, find some face claims on Pinterest, and just make an edit. Add some text, add a quote, and then export that and watch it over and over and over again to the point where you kind of forget it's your own character and you just think you're watching a book edit and you're like, this is so good. Also, I want people to like make other edits like this of my character, but that can only happen if I finish the book, and then it makes you want to work on the book. So you're like not guilt tripping yourself, but it's definitely, again, similar to the Pinterest thing. It's inspiration, it's motivation, it's harnessing your desire of like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I like this book, or I forgot how much I really, really want to write this one scene that happens between character A and character B. Okay, I cannot wait, I'm gonna work on it right now. Especially if you do all three, that's even better, but you can pick and choose depending on what helps you to hopefully get in the mood. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, you're prepared, you have a loose outline, you have a plan, a deadline, a schedule, you're in the mood now. Now what? Now this is the part of the video I want to transition into talking about. Let me reference my little notebook. I want to talk about the actual content of your writing. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is not a craft video by any means. I might do a separate video on like writing advice, specifically like craft advice. I do want to touch on a couple of bases of things I think you should be aware of and a writing myth that I want to debunk. The first writing myth I want to debunk is there's this piece of advice that floats around on social media of you have to write every day to be a writer, blah, 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 blah. You don't. Let me just clear the air right now. You do not. Do I try to? Yes. But only because this sounds so bad, bro. I don't want to say I have attachment issues. I kind of get bored of things easily. Not people, for the most part, but like just like things. Food, hobbies, like I just get bored of things easy. So I feel like if I'm not doing something actively, if I'm not in a sport where I have practice every day, I'm gonna get tired of that sport. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's the same with writing. If I'm not flexing my writing muscle, so to speak, every day, and I'm not immersed in the world every day, I start to lose interest in that world because I start to get so preoccupied with this world and with all the responsibilities that I have to do that if I don't write for a week, I just get in the spiral of it's not important. Okay, I forgot what happened. I forgot what I last wrote. I don't really want to do it. Like, I have other things to do. However, if you make a consistent pattern of it, it kind of goes easier. And if you can like keep your mind half interlocked in your world, especially if it's a fantasy where you have your own world, your own magic system, all of these new unique elements. If you can stay as connected to those as possible without like giving yourself distance for too long, that's going to help reduce the chance of plot holes or make things make more sense to you as you write, make your draft a little bit cleaner, a little less messy. But I know life gets in the way. I talked about this in my last video. I hit a writing slump for like a whole week where I didn't write. Like, it happens. Life's, and sometimes you just can't write for a few days or a week or 2 weeks. So of course you don't have to write every day, but I think, again, going back to the carving time into your schedule, if you're able to, I do think there is some benefits to that. Let's for real move on to the actual content of writing. The first thing I want to point out is the emphasis, the importance. This is not a myth. I'm not going to debunk this. This is something I back and I stand proudly. It is the show, don't tell rule. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with it. If you've never even written before, I'm sure you've still heard it somewhere. I feel like it's one of those things I can't really explain, so I'm just going to give you an example. I'm making this up in my head, so if this doesn't sound right verbally coming out of my mouth, I apologize. But I'm going to give you two options, two different text options. Straight out of my imagination, I'm making all of this up. And you're going to think to yourself, what sounds better? What would I be more invested in reading? What would tug on my heartstrings more? Okay? Option number 1. Daniela sat on her bed and cried. That's it. That's it. Daniela's sad for whatever reason. We'll get to that in another paragraph. You'll learn. And she's on her bed crying. Okay? Does that elicit a reaction? Maybe. Versus, wait, let me get to option number 2. Daniela stumbled into her room, knocking over the furniture as she went. Her back hit the wall as she slid down it, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was too lazy to wipe them. It tasted like salt on her tongue. Oh my gosh, that was so bad. Like I said, I was making this up like on the spot, so the prose of that was awful, but you know what I mean, okay? And then if you were thinking to yourself, wow, wait, option number 2 gave a raw, realistic, vulnerable reaction out of me. I felt a lot more invested in Daniela. That's a prime example of the show don't tell rule. You see, in option number 1, I was telling. I was saying, Daniela sits on her bed and she cries. Okay, and then you imagine, okay, she's sitting on her bed, she's crying. But then in the second one, you see I break it down a little bit more. I really describe every action. Now, you don't want to go too crazy with this. Don't go too crazy with describing every single action, every single thing they do. But if it's a really significant point in the story, or if you want to elicit that kind of emotional reaction from your readers, this is key. You want to describe it in a way that doesn't feel step by step. First she did this, second she did this. No. In and of itself provokes such a strong reaction because you just imagine that in your mind. Like her just kind of like leaning against a wall and then like stumbling down and then sliding down it to the point where she's just like this. Eventually maybe her knees are tucked to her chest. And then if you describe it, instead of just saying she cries, I mean, we know what you mean. If you say someone's crying, we know like what a crying person looks like. But if you really go deep into it, salty tears stream down her cheeks like a river. It's like, ooh, like we really get the full imagery, and it feels so much more real. And I feel like it really drives the point home of like, oh dang, like she's in distress. This is a sad scene. I think where and when you can, try not to over describe. It's a very fine line. But if you catch yourself doing this, and this could also be more of an editing thing, Josie ate a cracker, but like the cracker's significant. It's, let's say she ends up getting poisoned from that cracker in the next chapter. Describe how the cracker tastes. Use your 5 senses. I feel like sensory details is really important to the show don't tell rule. What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? Get into those nitty-gritty details because I know they seem unnecessary to you, but I promise the readers will appreciate them. Okay, next writing content thing I want to talk about is POV and character voices. I feel like POV is kind of a hit or miss because it's an equal mix of genre expectations and your personal taste. For instance, if you are a contemporary romance reader, I would say 97% of them are dual POV. In almost every single one of those types of books, it's always the girl's point of view, always the guy's point of view. Now, most of the time they alternate back and forth. Sometimes it'll be like the girl's POV for 2 chapters, then the guy's for 1, then hers for 1, then his for like 3. It depends. Whereas if you go over to something like fantasy or dystopian, usually it's just limited to like our main characters' POV. You might get a little hint of the love interest or another character, but it's mainly one person. I feel like with romantasy taking over, we are seeing more of that dual POV or multi-POV, but for the most part, it is kind of limited. Again, that's where the genre expectations come in, but it's really up to you. I'm not here to tell you that if you're writing a contemporary romance, you have to make a dual POV. Now, is that kind of an expectation? Yes. So if you're planning to publish, our readers are going to be a little irritated, most likely, that it's not, because that's kind of what they expect. Probably, but I always go back to the saying of you're not here to please your readers. Whether you're trying to publish or not, whether you're going to go the self-publishing route or the traditionally published route, your job, your whole purpose of writing your novel is not to please readers. You're not writing it for the readers. You're writing it for you. At the end of the day, for your contentment, your enjoyment, your satisfaction. It's for you, but you just want to share it with the world at the end so that everyone can read what made you happy in the first place. That's the key. Again, mindset shift. Writing is so psychological. It's all about mindset. But it's up to you. I'm also not going to tell you that if you have a sci-fi, which there's like usually never typically dual POV, that if you want to make it multi-POV, that you can't do that. You totally can. I do think, however, you need to be intentional with your points of view. And I mean that in the sense of the character voice. Now, character voice is exactly what it sounds like. It is the backbone of your character's internal monologue. Whether it's first person or third person, this is way more prevalent in first person. It's the little details. It's the certain words they use. It's the way they talk. If they are, maybe they've grown up on a farm their whole life and they're kind of a cowboy or a cowgirl and they, live in the South, maybe in their internal monologue they say y'all a lot, or they say, some southern words. If they're a little bit more of the rougher on the outside type of characters, they're a little bit more brittle and cold than others. Maybe in their internal monologue and thoughts, they cuss a lot. Whereas maybe you have this super innocent, young, pure character. Maybe they never cuss. Maybe they specifically overuse like heck and dang to drive home how much they don't like that or how innocent they are. Maybe they have a more flowery voice. Maybe they're always asking questions. That means that they're just even more innocent. They're really curious. Do they always kind of have this inner voice within the inner voice, if that makes sense? It's all about the little details. Any little thing you can sprinkle in, it should reflect your character's personality. That is the core of what their voice is. And we all have a voice, even though we're not fictional characters. We all have this voice inside of us, in our thoughts, in our mind, things that we don't say, we filter ourselves, but we think. And that's kind of when you're writing a book, especially in first person, you really want to focus on that. You may think, oh, but my character's personality shines through in the dialogue. Well, yes, but in a good story, there should typically be an equal amount of thoughts and dialogue. You don't want your readers to feel cheated. You don't want them to feel like they only half know your characters because the only personality they get from them is through the dialogue. And they're so dry in their thoughts. You want your reader to be able to get a sense of them and like them based on their thoughts alone. And that's where the character voice comes in. And I think, again, going along with the POVs, if you do choose to have multiple POVs, that is perfectly fine. That is amazing. Most readers, specifically romance readers, prefer that. However, if you do go that route, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is making the character voices the same or too similar. Because the whole point of this, and a good exercise, is either you could do this yourself as you read through it, or you could have a friend or another writer, beta reader, read through it. Remove the chapter headings where it says character of the chapter's point of view is in, okay? See if that other person, or even yourself, can see clearly within the first few pages who's talking, whose perspective it's from, without it blatantly saying Joshua's, Lily's, you know what I mean? because that's where the voice comes from. Maybe not right away, but within the first few chapters, after your readers have a couple of chapters to acquaint themselves with, okay, this is Lily's character voice, this is Joshua's character voice, know whose is who without having to rely on that. You shouldn't have to tell them, because they need to be distinguishable enough to blatantly know, oh yeah, in the first line already, this has a very sarcastic ring to it, it's Lily's POV. And I think that, even if you're like, Marcelina, I'm not writing a multi-POV, this doesn't apply to me, this is useless information. I think the core values and basic lessons of a character voice is still important, because even if you're only having one POV that your book is from, you still want to nail down that voice. You don't want it to be dry, because we all hate dry texters, dry people. It's you can't get anything out of them, they're just telling it how it is, and there's no sense of their personality, their opinion on it, their attitude laced into the words. That's boring. We don't like that. That's why I think getting in the mood is so important, and that's also why I stand by the Spotify playlist, or it doesn't even have to be Spotify. I know a lot of other people are biased and hate Spotify, and there are definitely some things that bug me about the platform, but whatever music platform you listen on, making a playlist, because if you're able to listen to a song that reminds you so much, that can almost get you in that headspace without getting you in that headspace of that character, you can execute it so much better. Going along with that, I also want to debunk another myth. Self-inserts are not that bad. I've seen so much hate online, especially recently for some reason, of people being like, oh my gosh, you should never write a self-insert character in your book. Why would you write someone that's like you? That's a really telltale sign of amateur writing. So it's not though. Now am I saying you should make it an autobiography and write a character that is like you in every single way? No. However, I think it is very good for you to have a piece of yourself in every character. Yes, every character, even the villain, even the creepy stalker guy, even this abusive ex-love interest. I'm not saying for every part of you, but I think little flaws of yours, little quirky things you do, nervous habits. Also, I kind of influence other parts of people I know, but in a very subtle way. For example, if you read my last book, The Bow That Divides Us, Gracie is not an exact replica of one of my friends whatsoever. And that also just wouldn't be fair to her, but it also wouldn't make sense because this is purely fiction, and that would ruin the creative freedom that I have. That would put bounds of limitation on myself and on the story. But I just snuck in little references. For example, my IRL best friend does Kung Fu, and the year that I was writing that, she was kind of teaching me some moves, and so I snuck that in, the fact that Gracie also does Kung Fu, and then had a little lesson with the main character, Alyssa. And that lesson was not word for word, but paraphrasing the lesson that my friend had taught me. And that's okay. It's one of those things, it's almost like an inside joke, because no one's ever gonna know that. I mean, y'all are gonna know that, because I just revealed it to the public. Surprise, surprise, if you're still here. I thought it was fun, because I know how to write that now. Not because I have any experience in Kung Fu, but because I had an actual experience like that. So don't be afraid to put little pinches of salt, pinches of spices of yourself, your personality, your flaws. Let's say you have a really weird habit where you have to wear AirPods to bed and listen to music to fall asleep. Maybe have one of your characters do that. That doesn't make them a self-insert. It's just inserting parts of yourself into the character. See what I did there? And that's fine. I just think that sometimes why people hate self-insert so much is because we as humans, and I can speak for all of us, we all know the truth, we all know that we do this. We tend to sometimes not so self-aware about ourselves and about our own flaws. And if you, not saying every one of us thinks we're perfect, but we just don't, we can't recognize the full 365 look of us, which is why it's so easy to write a character based on another person, like a friend, a parent, a sibling, but not about ourselves, because we tend to hold ourselves in a high regard, and then that's how a Mary Sue character is born. Which, if you didn't know, a Mary Sue character is a slang term for a character that is perfect, that has no flaws, that's like a superhero, they do everything right, and again, they make no mistakes, no flaws, they're basically invincible. Last time I checked, this is not a Marvel comic, sorry to break it to you. That's just not enjoyable to read. It honestly ticks people off. No one wants to read about a character who's absolutely, utterly perfect. Like everything else, I think it's a fine line. I think you have to just pick and choose tiny parts of yourself, but let your imagination do most of the work. Let your imagination guide the way, and that combination is priceless. That's how you make really good characters. Okay, this video is getting so long, and my throat, I don't know if you can tell, my throat is like dying. My voice is dying. So I'm gonna wrap this up, but the last thing I wanted to touch on is finding other writer tubers and writing influencers, finding other writers who make writing vlogs, who give writing advice and tips that you can follow, and you just kind of have a playlist of them, a rotation, or you've saved a bunch to watch, because I think that's a good thing to do in between writing sprints. So going back to that, if you do a 30-minute writing session and then maybe you take a 10-minute break and you watch a writing vlog, that not only is that a break, especially if that's something you like watching in general or you were going to watch anyway, so it doesn't feel like writing, especially because you're focused on someone else's life, you're focused on someone else's project, their struggles, the ins and outs of their world, the complexities of their characters, all that stuff. But it's still kind of keeping you in that writing headspace, and then if they throw in a little tip here or a technique here or a method that they like to use, you could get inspired, you could maybe take notes. That's how I found like all of my personal processes for how I outline, how I edit. I learned how to format and make my own book cover, like through these online free resources. I mean, YouTube is the best resource you can use. So I just wanted to kind of shout out, but then also just raise awareness to some of my favorite writing YouTubers. I have a bunch, but these are my favorites. So I'm going to flash them on the screen. These people are incredible. These are like my daily lineup. I'm not even joking. I always have them on either in the background or most of the time not in the background, because they're so awesome and amazing, and their videos are so awesome and amazing that I like to really pay attention when I watch them. So like I said, I'll do it on break or in between a writing sprint. Some of them are published authors, some of them are not yet. They're working on their debuts, which is amazing, and I'm so excited for them, and I think you should totally follow their journey because it's such a fun time. But I think that finding your niche, finding what you like to watch. Do you like to watch published authors talk about tips and tricks and their writing vlogs? Does that inspire you? Is that a little bit discouraging to you? Do you like to watch people who write in the same genre as you, or does that not matter? Like, find your specific area, find an online community if you want to, and you know, especially if you're a minor and if your parents allow you, like, make a channel. I never had any writing friends because I don't know if it's just the state I'm in, but literally no one likes reading out here, no one writes out here. It's crazy. Through the year that I've had this channel, well, I've had this channel a year, I've been posting edits for my last book and this book for a year, but I only started making these long form videos and vlogs about 6 months ago. But when I started doing that, I cultivated such an amazing community. So many fantastic, sweet, funny, chaotic, brilliant people, not just of writers, of readers, of teenagers, young adults. We all kind of come together over this bond of writing. I've literally seen people debate about what team they're on for the love triangle in my book, and sometimes they know each other, sometimes they don't, but they literally just have this like playful mini argument in the comments. I'm like, oh my gosh. Or I've seen people literally share their whip ideas in my comment section, but like they're just talking to each other, and it's the most wholesome thing ever. But I think that in and of itself gives me motivation. That in and of itself makes me want to work on my book, because I am bringing these people together. People are interested in reading my book. People are definitely interested in reading yours, whether you've shared about it and posted about it or not. You don't have to, but I think if you plan to publish, it is a smart marketing decision, especially if you go the self-published route. Not now, but in the future, I do plan to make another sit-down video comparing TradPub versus self-pub. I've gotten quite a few questions on that, and I want to do like a pros and cons type video. But until then, I think that whatever you choose, like finding people to support you, finding people to cheer you on, keep you accountable, check in, be like, how's your book going? How many words did you write? Hey girl, maybe you should get off TikTok and start writing. And I know writing is mainly a solo destination, but it doesn't have to be. And I think writing a book is such a big accomplishment. Yeah, you are relying on yourself, because unless you're co-writing a book, which I've never done because that sounds really challenging, but you don't need to collaborate with other people. It comes from your imagination, your brain, and your brain only, and only you can execute it. You could have this copycat back into your files and have the same plot, the same characters. Even if they do that, they're never going to write the same story as you. I promise you. Your writing voice, your writing style is unique. No one is going to write the book like you, so just write the dang book. Don't be afraid to share your story with the world. And don't compare yourself either. They always say comparison is the thief of joy, and it really is. I know it's hard in the age of social media where everything feels like a competition, but it's not. And I don't make this video to flaunt or to put anyone down. I just really hope that it helps. It gives you some motivation, gives you some tips. And like I was saying at the beginning, this is definitely not the best writing advice video out there by any means. I'm so scatterbrained and I'm all over the place. I hope it gives you some sense of direction of if you were a little bit stuck or a little lost or just overwhelmed and not sure where to begin. I hope I gave you some starting points so that you can make your dreams come true and make your 3 a.m. story idea an actual book. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you are not already, so you can get notified whenever I post a new video. Next week, I will be back with my regularly scheduled vlogs. So if you don't like this kind of style, we're switching it back up next week, because next week I'm actually going to start editing my book again, which is really scary, but I will be documenting that whole process. I hope all of your writing projects are going well, or if you're new and you're just starting, I hope that you can now begin your writing journey, your career, or simply a hobby in a more successful way. It's fun, but also productive, and you can actually finish the thing and not abandon it. I will see you all in the next video very soon. Bye!